I have been with the mastermind since its inception. Loyal follower here. Tons of value in this group. I wouldn't be where I am as a creator without it.
What I love about it is that these conversations energize me, but it also keeps me grounded. I can tend to have a lot of ideas and not really know the steps to take to implement them. So I found that this has been invaluable for forcing me to keep my head in the clouds, but one foot on the ground, hopping forward.
I've lost track at this point. This is my 4th or 5th session with Mastermind, but I found it absolutely irreplaceable over these last 2 years, just from a mentality and a support system. So I'm a huge believer in this, and everybody new that's here, I think you made a good choice.
What I get from the group is encouragement, and just the positivity that we get from this every time is very helpful, because it can be draining sometimes.
Definitely have seen revenues increase and profits. I just want to keep that ball rolling and snowballing and have a great time.
I really like the support of the group to make me feel a little bit less terrified of people looking at me and judging the things that I'm making. And I found that this group has been great for that.
As far as what I get from this group, it's a lot of different things. Structure is one of them. I have a hard time focusing a lot of times, and this group helps me keep accountable. Every time I come, it's been a great experience. It's the inspiration, not just in terms of good attitude and a good vibes, but seeing where I could get to if I keep persisting.
A lot of it is cheering myself on and helping others when I see them struggling.
I'm just excited about the connections, just for soaking up sponge like what everybody else is going through creatively.
To Tyler, we were con buddies in the early days, just learning from him, and as he's grown, kind of riding that wave along with him. The reason I am here is because I just want to get better at this stuff and learning from other people's successes.
My children's book series originated from a seed that Tyler put into my, and I think it was the first time he was like, I would like to see what you would like to share with the world, Moana.
I gain a lot from trying to learn from everyone else's challenges and leveraging their knowledge. I didn't have to go through as much pain as the more experienced members have gone through.
It's really inspirational for me because I learned things that I hadn't even been thinking about yet, because I haven't gotten there in a project yet. And those kinds of things are super helpful for when they do come up.
The mastermind group is people that just want to take the focus a little further and are just a little bit more, I don't want to say obsessed, but a little bit more skin in the game, right?
And I learn a lot from all the creators here, and I think I get just as much, if not more, from everyone else's hot seats and issues than I do my own. The encouragement and the support system that I get through this is why I keep coming back.
If you'd like to meet once a month with a group of serious, like-minded creators to talk about your projects and creative business for mutual support and accountability, go to ComixLaunch.com/mastermind and get on the interest list. Hello, we are live, and this is a special ComixLaunch presents Pop-Up MasterMind Session. This is an all-star edition. I'm so excited to be here. So if you're watching the replay, if you're watching us live, please thank you for joining us, and let's make this interactive and engaging. And I'm going to tell you how, if you're watching at home, you can get involved as well. But what is a mastermind anyway? What are we doing here? A mastermind is a group that offers a combination of brainstorming, education, peer accountability, and support in a group setting designed to sharpen your business, creative, and personal skills. So that's what a mastermind group is. And in the video that played before we went live, those are a number of creators, actually just a small number of creators that I've worked with over the past several years that have been intimately involved in a mastermind group that I run. And they sort of shared the value that they get from participating in these groups. But a mastermind is a group that's there to help you and everyone that's involved in it achieve success. But what we're doing tonight is a special kind of mastermind. It's called a pop-up mastermind. And what a pop-up mastermind is, it's a one-time event where the creators that are involved may or may not know each other well. And you'll find that the session is still highly valuable and a lot of fun. And so I am joined today by an awesome group of creators to put together a pop-up mastermind for you, and I'll be introducing them in just a moment. Now, what is the ComixLaunch Mastermind? Well, the ComixLaunch Mastermind is a group that I run for comic book creators, writers, artists, self-publishers, people that are interested in the crowdfunding space. And twice a year, I open the doors for re-enrollment, and we will be opening the doors next month for the groups that will be starting again in July. So if you are interested, if after you tune into this pop-up session and you're like, I want some of that in my life, comixlaunch.com/mastermind is how you can find more information about the group that I run. And I'd be happy to tell you more about it. Running comic creator mastermind groups is one of the most rewarding things I do. It's one of the opportunities where I can really go deep with creators and see their businesses and their projects evolve over time, and it's just a lot of fun. And those connections are the things that really do, I think, make this journey bearable and exciting and a lot of fun, as well as growth and getting those big launches out there. So that's why I keep doing it. There will be a live info session all about specifically the ComixLaunch Mastermind coming up on June 13th, which is a Thursday, 3 p.m. So that will be a live session where you can come. I'll present what we have going on in this next session and be available to answer any questions while we are live. But tonight we have an all-star mastermind roundtable set up here. And there's one image that I didn't get a chance to update, but we have a great group here. Every creator in this group has appeared on the ComixLaunch podcast before and has definitely had success on the Kickstarter platform and beyond. And so I'm thrilled to welcome Caleb Palmquist, Rob Multari, Sarah Cooke, and James Powell. I didn't get a chance to update this image here because we originally were going to have Lori Foster on tonight, but she couldn't make it for things came up, and so Sarah is here. She's pinch hitting for us, and we are thrilled to have her. And so, what are we going to do tonight? We're going to give everyone that's tuning in live the mastermind experience, but really, what I hope to do is just to dive deep with the myself and the 4 other creators that are here tonight and make a really valuable live experience with everyone. And so my role here in this mastermind tonight is to be the facilitator. My job is not to be the expert, is not to have all the answers, but rather it was to recruit this awesome group and get the most out of this group. And again, every creator that is on here tonight, I handpicked this group. Every creator is a creator that has been featured on the ComixLaunch podcast in the past, that has had at least a few successful Kickstarter projects funded. And wouldn't you know it, they're also creators with projects that are either live right now or soon to be live. And we'll probably be talking about some of those projects as we go along. And so if you are interested in the world of comics, crowdfunding, etc., and you haven't subscribed to the ComixLaunch podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, that's something that you're definitely going to want to be doing. But what are we going to do tonight? Well, the core of what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be doing creator hot seats. And the way hot seats work is that I've asked every creator to come and bring a real topic, issue, challenge, struggle, or discussion point that they want to get the wisdom and expertise and counsel of other creators. I've asked everyone to come in here, and everyone has obliged. And so what's great about this is that usually in a mastermind, these are private groups. What happens in a mastermind stays in a mastermind, but these creators were nice enough to broadcast it to the entire internet so that we can all learn from their issues and the brainstorming around them. And so our hot seats will run like this. I'll ask each creator to first identify what it is that the issue or topic and the current challenges around that topic that they have and they want to get the support from the group about. Then before we dive in and try to solve this thing, we'll open things up for some discussion and clarifying questions, where we'll encourage creators to probe a little bit deeper so that we can really get to the core of the issue and make sure that any advice that we give afterwards or any brainstorm we give is really addressing the core of the issue. After that, we'll do some brainstorming. We'll ask the creator to sit back and just listen as the group shares some of their wisdom. And then at the end, we'll ask the creator to reflect back what ideas resonated with them and perhaps even commit to certain actions that they're willing to take as a result of the time we spend together here. So that's how our hot seats work. You'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. And then at the end of each session, this is something that I do to make sure that we leave every session on a high note. I'm just going to ask every creator to share their top takeaway or insight from participating in tonight's session. Now, it might be something related to the issue or the problem that they came in with. They might even get that solved tonight. But it also might be related to something another creator brought to the table. And that's sort of the power of the mastermind. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know to think about or be concerned with or even try to solve until we hear it from someone else. And so that's something that we'll definitely be doing at the end of this session. I'm also going to give the creators the opportunity to share where best to follow them and their work going forward. And also we'll take a little bit of time so the creators can share some of the awesome work that they are doing on the Kickstarter platform and beyond. If you are watching live or on the replay, this is a quick ask for you to, wherever you're watching, hit that like button, leave a comment letting us know who you are and where you're watching us from. Please share across your socials so that we can reach even more creators. If you haven't subscribed or hit the notify me button based on where you're at, just hit those buttons. They'll help us grow and they'll help reach more creators with this content. And then also I'm going to encourage you, even though my focus is going to be getting and drawing the wisdom out of this group here, I want to encourage you at home, if you have an insight, if you have advice, if you have a resource to share or strong feelings about any of the topics that come up tonight, please share those in the comments. These creators I know are creators that love to engage, may come back in afterwards and interact with the comments and myself as well. And who knows, we may even pull some comments in as we're going. But the core of what I'm going to be doing is just trying to draw the wisdom, the collective wisdom from this group right here. All right. So again, feel free to add those insights in the comments. And again, we'd appreciate anything that you can do to signal boost this thing so that the algorithms put this stuff into the feeds instead of all the garbage that is out there on the internet. This is going to be a positive, forward-looking, growth-minded group that we have together tonight. So we want to magnify this as much as we can. And we appreciate you all tuning in. So let's get rolling without further ado with our first hot seat. And so our first creator that we're going to bring on in our hot seat is Caleb Palmquist. Caleb, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Tyler.
Awesome. Your mic is sounding awesome. And just to introduce Caleb, if you are unfamiliar with him and his work, Caleb is a comic book writer who has launched many campaigns on Kickstarter and has to date now raised over $150,000 for his projects. He's best known for his series Unicorn Vampire Hunter, as well as the recently funded Dragon Grit. And Caleb is actually it's been a busy 2024 for Caleb. He has a project that's on Kickstarter right now called Modern Mythology Medusa #1. Caleb, what can you tell us about this new project?
Oh, sure. So this is the latest installment in my Modern Mythology series, which has historically been an anthology series. I did 2 anthologies, one in 2019 and one in 2021. And then this is a one-shot comic book about Medusa, only she is a globe-trotting treasure hunter who's on a mission of revenge against Poseidon.
Yeah, it looks fabulous. Campaign's off to a great start, and yeah, you've definitely been on a roll over the past couple of launches, Caleb. So excited to see another banger from you.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome, man. So you're going to kick us off. You're in the hot seat. You want to take the lead and share what's on your mind with the ComixLaunch audience here.
Sure. Okay. So you asked me to come up with a question, and my question was, how do I balance what inspires me with what actually sells on Kickstarter as I move towards being a full-time creator? So basically, I've been really thinking a lot about what to launch, like strategically what to launch, because I've been doing Kickstarter for about 7 years, and I'm trying to move into being a full-time creator, like very earnestly this year, which is why, as you mentioned, I've been very busy. I'm actually on my 3rd launch this year, and I have at least 4 more launches planned for this year, possibly 5 or 6. I'm aiming for a monthly launch, and I'm really trying to be strategic about what I launch. And in doing that, I've come up against the problem. Well, maybe not problem, but certainly the question of, well, what things work on Kickstarter, and which of those things align with what the values I have as a creator and what I want to make. Because not everything I've launched that I've been passionate about has been successful. And sometimes the things I'm passionate about and the things that do well are the same, and sometimes they're not. And I haven't really dialed in that strategy yet.
Awesome. So I love this. I think this is a topic that I hear a lot of creators wrestling with, and I know we're going to be able to dive deep on this one. But before we start sharing our advice, let's probe a little deeper. Anyone have any clarifying questions for Caleb, or what more do you want to know in order to sort of give Caleb the best possible advice here? Rob, kick us off.
Yeah. So, as far as like what you want to work on, have you all fleshed out things that you think do sell, or have you started doing that? Like, what I guess what thoughts do you have versus what you do want to do, and the things that you think are selling? Like, for example, Cthulhu, or some kind of a public domain character. Like, what have you been thinking about as far as like trying to attempt to kind of combine the two, what you want versus what sells?
Sure. I've thought about it a lot. My current campaign is something of an attempt to do that. This is a mythology campaign. It's Medusa, which is obviously a public domain character, I suppose. I also experimented with a cover that was sort of hopefully appealing to the a certain crowd that appreciates this kind of thing. This is like a cover that I think wouldn't be out of place in a not safe for work campaign, even though this is not one of those. This was sort of an experiment for that. And so, I mean, the things that have been very successful for me in the past have definitely been things that I think have very clear and clever hooks. But for the most part, I've avoided, I would say, public domain characters, like you said. Unicorn Vampire Hunter and Dragon Grit are my 2 most successful series. And while those sort of have like hooks and like things that like unicorns, vampires, dragons, westerns, they're not really like public domain characters per se. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question well or not, but I guess, I think that the latest experiment is like twofold. One is like going back to this public domain thing, like you said, with modern mythology. And then the other thing is sort of trying to do the like pinup cover thing. And I'm not sure that either of those have been like an extreme hit. I mean, the campaign is doing well, certainly. It hasn't like broken any records for me. So whether or not that's proof positive of anything, I'm not sure.
So, Tyler.
Sorry, can I ask a question? I'm just gonna dive in.
Yeah, and I was going and say, hey, James, do you have any questions?
So my question is kind of a little similar, but let's just say on this side you have a story that you know is going to kick ass and it's going to sell well on Kickstarter, but it might not be what you want to write. Maybe it even sucks your soul a little bit. And on this side is something that you love, it lights you up, you want to talk about it all day, but it barely squeaks by. Like, how do you feel about both of those? Is one of them going to bring more excitement to your life, even though it barely funds, or is the money and the numbers something that you strive for, which is totally acceptable? I don't want to negate the fact that numbers are important. I'm just curious, like, how you would feel about both.
Yeah. And I can tell you, my feelings have changed over time. I would say earlier on in my Kickstarter career, I would have said, the side that's like, what's the thing you're passionate about, even if it doesn't sell, like that all day. As I'm trying to move into this being my full-time career, I'm finding myself having to think about that more often. Now, I'm fortunate in the fact that I've had a few things that sort of really hit that Venn diagram of being things that I'm passionate about and are successful. But I can give you an example of a project that was something that I'm very passionate about and just didn't do well, which is not even on my profile. We ran it on Dave Lentz's profile because he co-created it with me. It was called Space Monkey Nights Go, which is like an 80s and 90s cartoon sort of thing about 4 monkeys who are like Voltron warriors, essentially. I could go into it, and I love this series, but I lost money on it on the first issue. And when I recently did a survey of my audience and like going like series by series, asking them to like rate their interest, that one was rated very low. The people who liked it really liked it, but everyone else seemed to not care. And they voted with their dollars too when we ran that campaign. And so that's sort of an example of something where it's like, I would do 100 issues of that if I could afford it. But not only does that not get me closer to being an independent creator who is doing this full time, but it also, that probably takes me further away from that. Like, because that first issue I lost money on, right? And like every campaign I do where I lose money is further from me being a full-time creator. So I don't know if that answers your question or not either. But.
No, it does. It helps.
Sarah, anything you want to know more about?
I think you might be muted. I can't hear you.
There you go.
Okay. So yeah, and you kind of touched a little bit on kind of the question that came up for me. But I guess for me, it's kind of a question of, are there things that you already want to do that are also going to be things that are going to be popular on Kickstarter, or things that are going to be like reasonably popular, and then if you add something like a fancy variant or something like that, could really bump them up. Because I think one of the things that I think about with this is, like, I have so many ideas for things that I want to put out into the world. And some of them I just know are not going to be funded. Like I write poetry. I used to write a lot more poetry, and I have an idea for like a poetry comic that kind of blends poetry and comics, but I think it would be a hard sell on Kickstarter. And I would love to do it, but I don't know how I would fund it. But then I have other ideas that I also am really passionate about, and maybe, a little bit more kind of viable. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. Are there things that are maybe a little bit more viable that if you just added a little bit of extra something, I could bump them up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking like what things am I already doing that are marketable, I mean, I did or 2 campaigns ago, I did a campaign called Dragon Grit, which is a fantasy Western, cowboys that ride dragons. And that was the most backers I'd ever gotten. So I think in terms of that, it's like, this is the closest I've got to something that like really resonated clearly with backers. But I think the average pledge wasn't that high. And so I think certainly with something like that, I can, especially as there's more issues, and then if I have other add-ons, I could certainly increase that average pledge. And I think that something like this is definitely something that has the potential to be like an invaluable tool in my mission. And so for me, it's like, how do I take that and do more of that? How do I do more things like that? Because like I said, there is an answer, which is just do this, just do the thing that's the most successful and don't do anything else. But as all of us are here because we have like an insatiable appetite, and we want to do more, and we want to create more, right? So it's my strategy so far has been kind of dartboard, like try things out, throw things at the wall, and see what sticks. And so some things have, but then there's been other things that are like somewhat successful and reliable. For example, my series Unicorn Vampire Hunter, I always know it's going to fund, but it's never really getting me to the point where I'm absolutely killing it. There were a couple campaigns that did pretty well, but I'm never like feeling like I'm taking it to the next level. As someone that I talk to a lot is Mike Shea, who does Miskatonic High, and he would say, his series is very reliable. Is it ever blowing the roof off? No. And so it's like, it's good to have something reliable, but how can I take it to the next step and have something that's like explosive?
Yeah.
Is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. I want to let Caleb sit back a little bit and just do a little bit around the horn of just what comes up for you as you're tackling this, and what are some things that you want to maybe suggest to Caleb or consider. Do you want to kick us off, James, as someone who not just for your own projects, you work in an editorial capacity, you work with a lot of hungry writers and talented people with grand aspirations and pitches and packages and all the things, and in a lot of ways there's the reality of all right, here's your ideas, and there's a market over here, and those things are going to collide. But I'm curious what comes to your mind here.
So I think where my head goes is, I love your passion. I love to hear you say that you want to become a full-time, and it sounds like you have a plan mapped out. Maybe not the ideas yet, but you know where you want to go, which is important. I think what I would suggest, if you haven't already, is figure out what it is about those passion projects that you like. There's probably some hidden theme or tone or storytelling element that screams Caleb. And while you're doing that, you see if you can inject that into the selling books. I've worked with people before who write to market, and they don't necessarily feel it. They're not into it. And I think it's because they're not bringing themselves to the table. They're just, oh, this is selling, I'm going to go do that thing. And they forget that you're the creator. It's your voice shining through. And I'm guessing that in your projects, there's a couple of things that, like I said, scream Caleb. And if you could figure out what those are and bring those to the table, I think that's where you're going to start taking off.
Sarah, anything to add?
I agree. And I feel like I'm in a sort of a similar place to Caleb. And this is something that I think about a lot too. And just kind of, how do you take these things that you are passionate about and sort of grow them and level up? That's something that I think about a lot too. I mean, I think for me, I think it does start with, what are you passionate about? Because I think, just as a writer, I think that those are going to be the projects that end up being the most like emotionally resonant with readers and are going to keep readers coming back. And it shines through if it's something that you are passionate about. So I think all the suggestions about kind of figuring out what is it that lights you up about a project, and either can you put that into something that is really marketable, or if there's something that you're kind of already doing that you're passionate about, but there's, and this is the part that I'm still trying to figure out for myself, but if there are things that you can do with these projects you're already passionate about to kind of reach a wider audience, kind of going at it from that route. So I think that it is a sort of a cross section of what you're passionate about and what you think is the most marketable. But to me, I think it starts with, what is it that you want to be spending all of this time in, because that's going to shine through the most at the end of the day. That's where I come down on it.
Yeah. Rob, I'm curious where you come from with this, because I mean, you're someone who your ongoing series is a book that you've been working on in one form or another since you were in high school, I believe. So definitely in it for the long haul, but you have also branched out and found ways to magnetize it. But I'm curious, what advice or thoughts do you have for Caleb around this?
Yeah, I mean, I as Tyler said, I've been working on mine for a very long time, and I do have other ideas that I want to get into eventually. But I think, from a standpoint too, like I have all these different ideas. The same kind of thing is like, how do I like tap into that market to then be able to like bring that back and put into the ones that I'm more passionate about. Oftentimes too, like when we are looking to spread our focus, sometimes we forget to look inward at the things that we're already doing. As you mentioned during your hot seat, that you had in Dragon Grit was your highest backer count, correct? And that your backer pledge average was low. There's things to be said there for your current campaigns that are doing really well. There's ways that for the next one that you can capitalize on that more and bring your average pledge level up. I mean, so that's something that I think would help you more so than trying to throw, paint splatters at the wall, trying to figure out which tiny dot is the one that's going to be the big one. You know what I mean? So like, for example, for Dragon Grit 2, when you come back to Kickstarter with that, have some more variants, have some very limited high-end variants, have big packages. And that's kind of like a lot of the stuff that I've been doing with Nightwolf is, I have multiple variants, but not too much that are like overwhelming for everybody. They're well within like a decent manageable amount for me and for the backers. But I also limit them. I charge differently for my variants. I make sure that I have like, my regular artist has his cover, and then I go out and I find other artists who are doing like great, covers out there, some that have names on Kickstarter, some that have like bigger names in like indies or whatever, but just trying to like cultivate the best look for a cover that's still associated with the story, and then like limit that. So like what I kind of do as well is like, I look at these and I'm like, all right, I kind of have an eye of which one is going to sell based on what it looks like. And that's going to be, if that's like one of the higher sellers, I'll put that in the middle in a price tier, if you will. And then some of the other ones that I know will do really well, I'll put it kind of like higher, but at a limited edition to kind of like draw in those collectors. That's really where your bread and butter is going to be for Kickstarter, is the collectors, because that's why they're coming to Kickstarter, not only to get new things, but also because they like coming for the unique collectability on Kickstarter, because you're not going to get that in all of that stuff at a con. You're not going to get all that stuff at comic shop. They're not spending the money there for those. Especially if you're not in Diamond, you're not being distributed, when you're not putting all of your variants in like Marvel or DC does. So you have to mark up your collectability towards, not only keeping your readers happy, but also the people who want everything. Because there's the completists out there who are going to go and say, I want every single one of your covers just because they exist.
Yeah. Whenever this sort of question comes up, one book that always comes to mind when you're putting on your sort of business hat, and and often the ruthless business publisher hat is a lot different than the sort of cool fedora or whatever of the writer creative, right? But when you're putting on that publisher hat, the book is by Mike Michalowicz. It's called The Pumpkin Plan. And I've probably mentioned this a bunch of times on the podcast, but I'll just, the quick option is Mike one time went to a county fair and there was a giant pumpkin contest. And he was talking to the guy who wins whoever can grow the biggest pumpkin every year, and was talked to the guy who's apparently been winning it year after year after year. And he basically said, you know, the secret to growing the biggest pumpkin is you do your best to, you know, get the best soil, the best seeds that you can. You plant a bunch of seeds, and then you see what happens once the sun and the weather and everything makes, and you watch, and one or two of those pumpkins are going to actually come up, and a lot of others are going to struggle. And then you just have to be ruthless about killing all of the pumpkins that aren't. And you put all of your passion, your time, your energy into growing that one pumpkin. But when you have that big after you have that big champion pumpkin, that thing's going to give you the best seeds that you're going to possibly have going forward. And so a creator, even though nothing in that book had anything to do with comics or this, but when I think of Robert Kirkman, he seems like the kind of creator that did that. He planted a ton of seeds early on in the early days. You know, your battle popes, your tech jackets, your all of these various things. And it turned out he really had two pumpkins that took off. And so he kind of pulled back and put everything into that, and then ended up, you know, with Invincible and Walking Dead, creating two of the biggest independent properties of the last 20, 30 years. But one thing that Kirkman was also able to do, and also this is something that John Lees, who's a writer that I work with and publish, has also been able to do, is he realized, all right, when we have one of these things that is taking off, I can actually tell a lot of stories that I might have wanted to tell in their own books or other books. I can interweave those into this thing that is already successful. And so John, you know, John's grandmother has always wanted him to write her story of growing up in Glasgow, post-World War Glasgow. Well, John knows that he's probably like, he wouldn't feel comfortable like writing that as a prose novel and a real world thing. But he made his grandmother a character in his Sync universe and told an awesome vampire story that happens to take place in post-war Glasgow, starring his grandmother. Right. And so, but the same with Kirkman. He was able to bring back all of those canceled Image books, or books that like probably never made it off the pitch, you know, never were accepted as pitches. Weaved them into Invincible. I'm sure he weaved some stories or some tales or some arcs into Walking Dead and the framework of Walking Dead. And so that's, you know, advice that I definitely see creators doing is, you know, feed that hot hand, do more of that, but try to get creative of how you can bring the stories that you really want to tell under that umbrella that already has a connection with an audience. And honestly, to a large extent, I see you doing that with a lot of what you're doing. You know, the modern mythology brand, going from anthology now to you know, a sort of a spinoff or a done in one series. Like, this is a nice seed to plant that I could see you telling more stories if this one is successful, and if you like how that goes. But it's an open enough tent that you can fit more things into it. But when I see Dragon Grit, you know, doing significantly higher than any of your other projects, that would be a clear sign that, oh, okay, this is going to be a thing that we're going to do more of, and more like it would definitely be a thing. So, Caleb, I want to just turn back to you to just reflect a little bit about maybe what resonated here and what you're taking away, and what you know, where you think you're going to be headed as a creator?
Yeah. So I think that I like the pumpkin thing. I mean, something that I definitely have thought about is, you know, how to take what I'm doing well and do more of it. And that is sort of a mixed bag, I think, sometimes, especially if you're talking about like, okay, can I take a property, like, for example, this last Kickstarter I did was a spin-off of Unicorn Vampire Hunter that was like a mashup with my other series, and it did okay, but it was low performing compared to a lot of stuff that I've done. And then I also did a campaign at the beginning of this year when I went on your show. Actually, we talked about this, and which was called the Tiger Who Would Be King, that just was a flop. And that was something I was trying something brand new. And then Dragon Grit was something I was trying that was brand new, and it did very well. Now I have another spinoff of a Unicorn Vampire Hunter in the works that is like a more clearly defined spinoff. It's not a crossover, that I think has potential. But then there's a question of like, well, you know, like with Invincible, is a good example. Like, you know, there's like Tech Jacket and whatever other books that he had that were like spinoffs of that. Are there diminishing returns to that? You know, like, how much can I like milk a dead cow, you know, like before it's, I mean, like, if you look at Rob's work, we have Snowpaw, which is very successful, which is the spinoff of Nightwolf. But then, you know, like, if we get like 3, 4, or 5 spinoffs into Nightwolf, like how much of that can happen? And so, you know, I think, okay, yeah, I guess the thing is like, it's hard to know.
It really is hard to know, and it often but I think like the analogy there is like when you're doing a spinoff of something that has some strength to it, it puts it in a good position, and sometimes the spinoff becomes bigger than the original, right? You know, Deadpool is essentially a spinoff of you know, a spinoff of a spinoff of a big franchise, and Deadpool arguably right now is much bigger than the X-Men, right? So yeah, you know, you don't know. And Rob, I think with Snowpaw, he was able to tap into a slightly different audience then also fed back into the original work. So
yeah. Sorry, can I butt in real quick? I think I mean, now that I hear more about you and I see Tyler scrolled through that list and you're talking about spinoffs, and it feels like, to kind of go back to that pumpkin analogy, it feels like you're kind of all over the place from an outsider. And I'm willing to bet that your readers are strong in 1 or 2 or 3 of those titles, and they're going to want you to be more consistent with those 3. And then maybe once a year you do a spinoff or some sort of different or a passion project. That's kind of what I'm starting to see now. And I think you could work with what Rob said, which is, okay, here's this 1 or 2 projects that are the money makers. You double down on those and give what the fans want. And then maybe every now and then you do the project that's completely different, or that's the more of a passion project that you're doing for fun. And I think that once you get, I don't know where it resides when you're big enough, but you start to sell those passion projects a little bit differently because they're following you. And Caleb says in his newsletter that he's really into this thing that may be weird or out there. I'm going to buy it just because him as a creator, I trust him now. I want to check out everything. So I think that all those things would start to build as you get rolling. I mean, you're already going along, but
I also think it's worth keeping in mind, you know, sometimes we'd be like, oh, this thing didn't do quite as successful as this one. And you know, I feel a little bit bad that I can't bring the same size audience to everything that we do. Well, this goes for everybody. And actually it's bigger at bigger scale. You know, look at Brian Polito's campaigns. Now they all do phenomenally well, but his Lady Death stuff might do $200,000 more than some of those spinoffs or other things that otherwise are similar. It's just, that is a different thing. And you look at like box office stars, Ryan Reynolds probably going to release 3 movies this year, and some of them are going to tank and some of them are going to sell a lot of money, sell a lot. And so, we don't always know, but I will say most publishers do, like, they're able to stay in business and float those and take risks by feeding the things where there is a proven fan base for. It's why, it's why Batman is always going to come out from DC and Spider-Man's always going to come out from Marvel. And they actually open up doors for other things. So,
yeah, it's so a couple of things that I'm currently doing. For example, my very next Kickstarter is actually Dragon Grit 2. I've spent the last week like sending out all the rewards for Dragon Grit 1. Is one of my fastest turnarounds I've ever had on a campaign, and I have a plan to hit Kickstarter every 3 months with a new issue of Dragon Grit, which I think is hopefully it's an experiment, and I'm hoping that it pays off, because that that is the thing that did the best. Like you said, doubling down on the thing that did well. And so, and I am definitely seeing that, my audience is not going to come to everything. I specifically polled my audience and I asked them about every single series that I did. And definitely there were, I noticed a couple of interesting things. One, there were certain things that I was doing that were just not very popular that I have decided to move back from. And then there were another thing that I noticed is there were some people that followed me that only want one thing that I'm doing, which I think is fine, good even. But there are some people who specifically are like, oh, your King Arthur stuff, we want you to do more of that. And I'm not going to buy anything else from you until you do another King Arthur book. And so, it's to that extent, I'm like, okay, I can focus on just the things that are very successful, but also I do see people that really care about some of the other stuff that I'm doing and want me to do more of that stuff. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, can I grow all those audiences separately, and keep the train going? And if I launch every single month, can I have people who are just getting Dragon Grit, or who are just getting Unicorn Vampire Hunter, or who I have some people who really only like my Vampire Detective in Space series, which is one of my least selling series, like relative. It's like one of my least popular things, but I have some people who only back that and don't back anything else, and ask me all the time for more of that. And so I guess on one hand, I'm like, okay, I could just focus on like Dragon Grit and Unicorn Vampire Hunter. If I go full on pumpkin analogy, that's all I do. But I think it feels like I'd be leaving something on the table if I did that. And I wonder, I guess a follow-up question is like, if I'm running 10, 12 campaigns a year and I'm doing the things that are successful, but I'm also doing those other things, is that a detractor? Are there people who are going to stop following me, who are going to stop investing in what I'm doing because I'm doing too much?
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is going to be another hot seat tonight that Sarah is bringing it in. So we're not going to dive into that now, but we will dive into that tonight. So we're going to have a good conversation.
But to kind of go back to like where you were saying about you polling your audience, I mean, you might be shocked that half of my audience, well, let's say, mostly half only backs Nightwolf and half backs Snowpaw, and there's only a little bit of crossover. Even though they're both, Snowpaw is a part of Nightwolf and they're both werewolf books. Some people either don't like the art from one and love the art from the other, and vice versa. The story, people prefer the fantasy side of Snowpaw and like the the female Scottish werewolf element, where others like the horror, darker side of things in Nightwolf. I mean, you're going to have that. You're going to have the people who follow you for everything. But then you're going to have the people who are like, no, I'm over here for this and I'm over here for this. You're going to have the buckets, and it's only going to be full so much for the crossover.
Right.
Well, I'm going to cap it here so that we can move on and get to everybody's hot seat. But this is a really great way to kick things off. Thank you, Caleb, for bringing that to the table. All right. Next up is a frequent guest on the Comics Launch podcast. It's been a little while since we talked to him, though. Rob Multari is a comic book creator and children's book author. He works in multiple genres. He's the founder of his own self-publishing company, Lone Wolf Comics. And Rob is best known for, as we mentioned, Snowpaw and Nightwolf. Welcome back to Comics Launch. Rob, you've got, speaking of Nightwolf, you're back on Kickstarter with something super cool. What do you want to tell us about it?
Yes, sir. So I am back on Kickstarter with Nightwolf Volume 2. It's issues Volume 1, Volume 1 and 2. You can get both through this campaign. Volume 1 collects issues 1 through 4 of Nightwolf, and Volume 2 collects issues 5 through 8. And so this basically is coming back to pay for the printing, to do another hardcover, much like the first time around, and also a soft cover with additional story pages by guest writers and some new additional pinup art. And as in a collect edition, that way there's 152 pages in both volumes. And for those of you who don't know Nightwolf and who've never heard of me, Nightwolf is a story about a young man who finds out that he's born a werewolf and gets thrown into a supernatural war against demons, witches, vampires, other werewolves. And this is, basically the story about his coming of age and how he deals with being a werewolf in this new world that's been open to him.
Yeah, and I got to plug Rob and Lone Wolf Comics and the Nightwolf hardcovers in particular. Rob, I think, has worked with the same printer that I work with on some of our die-cut Comics Tribe oversized hardcovers, and just really took it to the next level here, Rob, by not only making these Volume 1 and Volume 2 both die-cut, see-through with a vellum sheet of a werewolf overlay, and they connect. You got to be kidding me! This is all awesome. Made it so that I had to grab the second volume. And I also wrote a little story in Volume 1 too, so you're gonna have to check that out. And glad to see it back up there and closing in on your funding goal as the campaign rages on, man. But we got to bring you on here because you've got an issue for us. What are you gonna?
I've got issues.
To the table? You've got issues, man. Look at the back of Rob's room there. He's got a lot of issues.
Well, yeah, that's actually only a minimum. I have a storage unit full of, which kind of also brings me to this as well. So basically, like what I've been thinking about and how do I get to my next level, is basically distribution to retailers and stuff. And I've been thinking about getting into Diamond for a long time. But then I've never really bit the bullet because it's like, okay, well, the issues that I have in my storage unit are usually what I'm fulfilling Kickstarters with, taking the Comic-Cons, and they don't have the ISBN codes on them. They just kind of have my own fake UPC codes that I put in. So I would have to reprint those to be able to put them into stores, from my understanding, from what I've looked and read about that. Plus, if I were to put them into retailers, aside from the ones that are being put through Kickstarters, I probably would need to do new covers so that they become not just rehashes of things or reprints, if you will, of the current books. So a lot of it's if I go, now that I'm kind of getting towards my last third act, if you will, because there's 12 issues in this particular story arc. It's getting close to being that comfort zone where it's okay, I can put out a book a month for at least, a year for the story arc, and putting it through Diamond, then that way it's a monthly book for that time period. But then the question being, what do I do about printing enough to be able to give to Diamond? And then when I sell to Diamond, they don't give you your payment for your books right away. So that's a lot of books that I basically wouldn't have to sit on, that I would be paying for the printing cost for that. And then also, the new covers, that's also another cost. It's a matter of when I'm doing Kickstarters, I'm basically recouping from the art, paying for the shipping, paying for all the tchotchkes and all that stuff, and then enough to kind of like get going to like Comic-Cons and stuff. So like there's really no additional income to kind of put towards a whole nother reprinting at, probably at 1,000 minimum, that Diamond may or may not take. And then having to sit on top of that and wait for it is kind of like really like where I'm concerned about. Where the other side of things is, okay, well then do I, talk to somebody like, Antarctic Press who then would handle all that, or, but then I'd have to like, talk about, whatever the rights and stuff with that is, and how that works, kind of like similar to like what Tom Hutchison does with his Critter book through them. But again, my first thought is doing, figuring this out myself, if it's a viable way to do it.
Yeah. All right. Who has questions for Rob before we dive into sharing ideas? Anything to clarify?
So are you suggesting then that you would do a Kickstarter and go through Diamond for the same issues?
Well, I mean, basically it's going back and putting issues 1 through 12 into
right. I
So,
see.
yeah. So it's the ones that have already been done, and then once I'm finished with, like 9, 10, 11, and 12, those would also go into Diamond once they're done. But it's a matter of, like I said, like I would have to put a new cover for each issue and then reprint with the, the ISBN barcodes on there, for the retailers.
Right.
I wondered, how does trades factor into this? I mean, have you considered the option of skipping the single issues through distribution altogether, and just doing your trade paperbacks?
So I cannot afford to just go straight to trade. So doing the single issues is the buildup. And that's kind of like how I've been modeling with my serialization. Every 4 issues doing a collection. And it's especially with, when it cost me a 24-page book, it costs, with everything cost me about 5,000-ish. I mean, rounding to that. That's just art. And then, with Nightwolf, I letter it myself. With Snowpaw, Dave Lentz letters my book. So it's like, that's, other costs and everything. So putting a full trade out without having a Kickstarter per floppy, for me is just, it's near it. It would take me probably 10 years just to save the money to do that.
But is the question, why not like put the Nightwolf trade into Diamond as opposed to
that's
single issues?
Okay.
That is my question. I'm like, you have Nightwolf done, like volume 1 and 2. Presumably you could use some of the Kickstarter funds when you print when you do the Kickstarter for the volumes to print the distribution version of the soft cover, and put that through Diamond or Simon & Schuster or whatever it is that you're able to get a deal through.
So you're saying use the funds that are left over from the trade? Is that
just like when you print your trade, like for example, when you're printing, like obviously this is like a difficult thing to apply in retrospect, but like as you're printing like your volume, like you do when you do this one, and when you do volume 3, right, a portion of those are printing a direct to market version that then you would send to distribution. I just wonder if, like, and again, I'm not super familiar with Diamond and distribution. I have some experience, but very little experience. But it is my understanding that trades tend to be kind of the moneymaker in distribution at comic shops.
I think that depends on the shop. From my experience, especially with putting my books in the shops, I have like locally and through Kickstarters, I have my books, my issues, and my trades, my trade, the current one, in those. And the floppies seem to have gone faster. And I know that some people still have like the trades in house. Probably price point on that as well. Like with the die cut brings that up. You know what I mean? Like that's a little harder sell in the shop. Yes, that would be great marginally for me. but and for the shop if they sell it. But I think it depends on the shop too. Like if you're a trade or a graphic design or not graphic design, graphic novel shop who sells those primarily as your bread and butter, I think that does work well for them. But I think a lot of the ones who are putting the floppies out on the shelves for the most part and have their people coming in and scanning the shelves, looking at the new issues, that again, it's different per reader. And personally, I'm a floppy guy. So going to shops, like whenever I do go, I'm picking up floppies and I'm not even looking at the graphic novel section. But there are people who do the opposite, so I think it's dependent on the reader. So like I would probably do both if possible, if that, to kind of maybe answer your question.
James, any questions?
I'm curious if how much research you've done into the timing of Diamond versus the timing of Kickstarter and how your system would work once it got rolling. Because, you have a Kickstarter and like Caleb said, maybe it helps fund the printing of the Diamond books, but you'd have to do it in such a way that Diamond approves it and you have it ready to ship to Diamond in a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's certainly not something that I can do because my planning is not that my thing, but that's a lot of juggling. And I'm just curious, like how you vision your system working. Put yourself a year from now, what kind of system you think you would have in place to get it rolling the way you want.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like why I'm waiting until issue 12 is ready and done. Like this is kind of like plan ahead mode for me. Whether or not, however long it takes, it should, within the next year or so to have that finished, that first story arc done, and then put that into the stores. Because, as running a Kickstarter is very long, daunting, and then, film it and all that and managing, putting the art and stuff. And then for me, this is my side thing that I would love to make full-time like Caleb. But I know that I'm far from that. As far as like, I have a family and, my job is where I'm getting my healthcare through with my, with my wife and kids. So this is, knowing my time that I put into this and, working with the artist and doing all this, it's something that these books basically have to be done. The only thing that I need to do then is put in a new cover and then get them printed. You know what I mean? So that time frame is a lot shorter. I can probably have all of those books reprinted all at the same time if I wanted to, but obviously the money doesn't work that way. So even if I do one a month, I could probably do that. But again, sitting on waiting for the invoice to be paid from Diamond is my concern, because that would be then the seed that goes back into putting into the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one.
So is it really, would you say the funding of this machine or the initial startup funding of this machine that is the challenge?
That's what. Yeah, if I had, and the extra whatever it costs, knowing the numbers that they want, if I had that ready to be able to then just kind of recycle it and let it live on its own, I would. That's kind of like.
Do you have a sense of what that amount is right now?
If I'm aiming at like 1,000 copies, because right now, like based on like, their current system, Diamond, maybe taking lesser numbers than like the thousands that they were, initially like, hey, you have to be 1,000s, right?
Yeah.
So I'm still kind of thinking like, okay, well, 1,000 might be still a minimum to actually make any kind of traction. So if I aim at 1,000 copies of issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's, probably, what, $2 a book, not including the cover, so that's at least 2,000 ish that I'd be looking at per issue,
Yeah. Okay. So, but then 3 months after 3 months, the funding would start coming back. So you probably need to be, out a max 5 or 6 grand.
Right.
I would recommend, so, and Sarah, do you have any questions or before we dive in, or do? Yeah.
I think that was, I think, sort of the main thing that I was wondering too, if that is kind of the main issue, is just sort of waiting on Diamond.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm sort of in a similar position where we made the strategic shift that our Series Sync was going to be Kickstarter funded for deluxe collector's editions at a more premium price point. In some cases, we'll do 2 issues at a time. But the product that will ultimately come out through the direct market is going to be a different product. We're sort of in this weird age where comics on Kickstarter are not $5, $4 books. They're just not. That's not what is sold there. That's not what can be sold there. That's not what the market there even is interested in. It's interested in premium stuff. And it doesn't make sense to flipping low volume $4 books for anywhere. So but it's still in the direct market. You know, you're not going to really be able to charge more than $5, $4.99 or whatever for a book in the direct market. So design a book that fits to that. And, you know, for you, that might mean you just create a different direct market trade dress, but use one of your better pinup or cover images that you already have, because money's a problem right here. Like, it doesn't make sense, especially because you don't know what your orders are going to be. Like, you could very easily spend the entire profit margin of your first Diamond order on commissioning a new cover. And then you're just like, that doesn't make any sense given how much you've already invested in this, from my experience. So I would create a new trade dress, tweak the colors a little bit, zoom in, zoom out, like do something, but like go, like, you have so much art already. You don't need to go get another piece of art for the direct market audience, which presumably you're doing to reach an audience that you wouldn't reach, that you haven't reached already. They haven't seen it, right? But you've already market tested your most popular covers. You've gone to 1 million conventions. Like, why not take advantage of that market research that you've already done and just like, hey, we're playing the hits here. In a direct market, but maybe we do it as a self cover that's on a slightly less thinner paper stock that makes sense at a $4.99 price point, and you're going to print overseas, and you're going to try to get it. Like, I mean, I recently did just checks on pricing, and it looks like about $1.50 an issue is actually, unless you're going above like 2,000 copies printed, you're probably not getting better than that, but it might be less than $2. So that's just, some thoughts in my head. James, anything that come to mind with you? I know you've had some experience. You had some experience going through the publisher route, but I don't know if you want to speak to that at all. Because Rob had mentioned considering, well, do I do it myself or do I try to go through?
It's possible that, finding a publisher you could piggyback. I don't know much about that, how that would work, but it might be worth looking into for sure. Especially since they probably have more connections and they have some money, and it sounds like, money's part of your concern. But I keep going back to Tyler's pumpkin thing again, but it's slightly different now, is that it's more your ideas that maybe you have to kill the lesser ones. And going back to Caleb's idea with the trades, I know you want to get your issues out, but maybe you test the waters with the trades in Diamond first. And maybe you kind of look at your system that I asked about earlier too. Like, I think Tony mentioned in the comments over here, collectors want floppies and readers want trades. So maybe you start to hone in on Kickstarter. Like, we're talking long term. That's where you have those beautiful variants and the beautiful collectors things. And then Diamonds, where you just kind of try to mass produce as much and get them to readers. And then, obviously at the end of the book, you've cycled them back to Kickstarter. Right. And I'm not trying to shoot holes in your dream or whatever. Like, I don't mean to be that guy, but testing the water might be something that you want to try first. And maybe that's just a single issue without thinking about all 12. I can't remember the company. I'm assuming, I don't remember hearing news about it. So maybe it floundered, but wasn't there a company out there doing one issue and then the trade?
I think Scout had like a branding name for that.
Yeah, they had a couple branding names that they tried out.
So I'm not sure if that would work exactly, but I think since you're at the planning stage, maybe kind of map out. I think Tyler, years ago, it was the minimal viable product when I started learning about Kickstarter as a whole. That might be something to kind of reevaluate and play with, just to see if the numbers are different than what you're thinking with the whole 12 issues monthly.
Sarah, any thoughts?
I haven't tried to do a lot of distribution beyond Kickstarter yet. It is funny what James is saying, because that was kind of one of the first things that I thought of in the beginning of this conversation is there a way to kind of ease into it without having to have without having to commit, I guess, to a plan for the whole 12 issues yet. I feel like that's probably what I would want to do if I were in that position. So I guess that's kind of the thing that occurred to me first. Is there a way to kind of test it, see how it goes? And yeah, I haven't worked with Diamond too much personally. But I feel like if I were in that position, that's probably the route that I would want to go.
And sorry, I'm having all these random brainstorms in my brain, so I apologize but like, I know you're trying to get into comic shops and do a monthly thing, but there's other options too, like, and I don't know if this is viable either, so I apologize, but like a free comic book day comic. I mean, granted, you have to print like 30,000 to get in stores, but I wonder if that's, now that I think about it, it's free and costly. So that's exactly the opposite of what you want. But I'm wondering if there's different avenues.
I mean, even like the big publishers have been very, I don't know if you went to a shop this year, but there was not a lot of free comics.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was just trying to think outside the box and see if there's a way to do something new and original, as opposed to a reprint, or reprint something in a different way, but besides just the cover. I don't know. I'm losing track now that I realize how bad of an idea that was. But
yeah, I mean, I think one thing just to keep in mind, and I think this might be part of the reason why Rob would love, or like in an ideal world, like, do the monthly release schedule is, I know you're an old school comics guy, so the idea of going to the comic shop to buy your own book once a month would be really cool. But there is also something to be said about much like you can build an audience on Kickstarter through serializing on launching, you can do that through serializing in the comic book shop. And if you just do the trade, I can tell you what's going to happen. You're going to get anywhere between 70 and 250 orders once, and then maybe, and that's it. And that's probably the end of it. And because it's not a book that there's going to be new stuff coming out and people finding it and discovering it and everything, that the orders are going to dry up, and that's going to be it. Like, that's kind of what happened with books that we've put out. If there's no series to go with it, your orders are going to be relatively low, because retailers like Tony are going to be less likely to take a chance on a $30 trade or a $25 trade than a $4.99 book that costs them, $2 to stock one. And so the volume of releasing a single issue in terms of like total numbers of orders, total number of comic book shops that are actually going to stock this thing will go up significantly if you start with a single issue. The challenge often is if issue 1 starts at 1,000, by issue 4 you might be down to 300 copies.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Getting through that sophomore slump.
Yeah, is the challenge. Sometimes it rebounds and picks up after that. But so those are some things to consider. Caleb, any last thoughts for Rob?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. I mean, I will say that my experience going through Diamond is through a publisher, and I definitely don't want to get on a soapbox. I have a lot of thoughts about that whole process that are not positive. However, on the positive side, I will say that 100%, I found new people through that Diamond distribution. There are definitely people that I know for a fact who found my stuff and then converted to Kickstarter. Whether they were Kickstarter backers or not, I don't know before that, but like people who found me through that distribution. So I would say, from my point of view, I totally applaud you. And I'm going to be watching very carefully, because if you do this, I'm going to copy what you do. And I'm not brave enough to be the one to be the guinea pig on it in terms of distributing independently. But if you could, because to me, the benefit was I got in stores and more people got to see me. And the downside was literally everything else about working with a publisher. And so now that's my own individual experience. And I worked with one publisher, so I don't want to besmear anybody else or anything else. But that said, I'm as I'm listening, I'm like, maybe the thing to do is to do the one issue and just put one issue out and see how it goes. Because I think if you go into it with the idea that I'm going to put out 12 issues in 12 months, you basically have to invest in more issues ahead of time without knowing how it's going to do. And I think that's sort of a double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, if it does really well, you're not ready with issue 2. But on the other hand, if it does really poorly and you've already printed 1,000 copies of issue 2 and you couldn't sell enough of issue 1, then you're kind of left holding the bag and you're like in a worse position than you were before. So I wonder if the solution is do your issue 1, get your best piece of art, do a new edition of issue 1 and just try to do it through Diamond and see how it goes. I mean, it's a risk no matter what, right? It's a financial risk no matter how you square it.
Right.
But like, I mean, I think that might be the thing, because then maybe after that you can go back, you can invest in doing the rest of the issues. Yeah, because I didn't think about it the way Tyler said it. Like, if you do the trade, maybe it's like a splash in the pan and then nobody cares and then you don't get more sales. Testing the waters with one issue might be a good idea.
Yeah.
And
just one thing to add, just in terms of like the funding and the financing thing. If I go back to the very beginning of Comics Tribe, entry into the direct market, I was sort of in the similar boat as you, Rob, where I did not necessarily have, I've got $6,000 just kicking around with a whole, with specifically for this project. But it really was that first Kickstarter for a different project that, well, the money hit my bank account. And even though it was more or less over time, it was going to, be all paid out and go for that project, the money was sitting there in the bank account. So I was able to take that and float, because just of the timing and things like that, I was able to float a first Diamond print run, and then come back 2 months later for the next issue. And the Diamond checks cleared fast enough that as long as I wasn't losing money putting it through Diamond, pairing up the Kickstarter with Diamond and understand that money is fungible and you can move things around from one project to another as long as the budgets are sound on each of them, and make sense. Like, that could be something that you could do. So potentially, like, all right, well, how can I time a Kickstarter that so that even if, like, just so that I have money, a pool of money that I can do, knowing that distributing through Diamond is not just throwing money away. It's actually, the money will come back. There's just a little bit of a time pool on it. So that would be something that I would think about. Like, is there a launch, or is there, like, $2,000 might actually be all you need if you went bi-monthly. So, could you do Could you do a, super secret grab bag collector's print enamel pin set, something other that raised a couple $1,000 with your audience? Probably.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, that was something, another thing I was thinking about. I was like, all right, well, how do I do a Kickstarter that won't cost a lot of extra that I could put like the funds towards that, like I do with cons? And then I was like, well, maybe do I pull back on cons? And, because anymore, with my 2 tables at a con, and then hotel and travel, that's well over $2,000 that I'm spending for that. So do I pull back on doing that? I mean, because this is really a means to, as Caleb said, getting in front of a new audience, and it's basically a marketing tool for me, because obviously I know I'm not making money on Diamond distribution to the retailers. That's not even in my mind. I'm like, maybe like, oh, I'm going to be famous. I just was like, this is going to be a new marketing to get new readership to potentially either come in through Kickstarter or however, or if they stay at the retailers, that's fine too, because, as long as that's continually being pushed, then like I'm fine with that too. So it's really just getting more eyes on the book, and doing it bi-monthly is definitely feasible. I just don't want to do the whole Joe Mad thing where like I put Battle Chasers out and you never see it for another 10 years.
Yeah, totally understand. Well, all right, Rob, any final thoughts before we move on to our next hot seat?
Yeah, no, I think the instead of doing maybe a new cover, like doing the greatest hits, like you said, and kind of changing it might be a more feasible way to kind of cut that cost a little bit and just focus on getting the books printed and out.
Awesome. So we're moving on here. I did want to give a quick shout out and thanks to some of the folks that are tuning in live. We got Connor Stack coming in from Australia, loving the gems of wisdom. Elijah Bohr is in the house. Asani Entertainment is watching. Our pal Joel Mulvey is drawing comics and listening to us talk about making comics. Doesn't get any better. Love you, Mr. Mulvey. We got Tony Cade again from his comic shop. Rob Anderson in the house as well. Thanks everybody for tuning in and checking us out. We've got 2 more hot seats to go, and so I'm going to bring on my next guest here. And who do we have? But we have the writer and creator of the comic No Spells Last Forever. She's also the co-creator of an award-winning science fiction comedy web series called My Human Experience. She's a longtime comics fan. She's written and reported for comics for a number of media outlets, including Marvel, DC Comics, Women Write About Comics, Fembot Magazine, and a whole lot more. Welcome back, Sarah Cooke. How are you doing, Sarah?
Doing pretty well.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you joining the boys tonight. And you have a project that is, I believe you just launched, was it yesterday?
Yeah, we just launched yesterday.
Already funded, heading towards 100 backers. Tell us about No Spell Lasts Forever.
So this is the 3rd issue of No Spell Lasts Forever. It's a 6-issue series. It's a noir contemporary fantasy about a magic building criminal who meets an early death and makes a deal with the devil for a second chance at life. But her kind of dilemma is she really the kind of person who can go through with that, and what does it mean for her if not? And yeah, it launched yesterday and reached its funding goal today, which is very exciting.
Yeah, that's always fun. Always fun to be into stretch goals and such early.
Yeah.
And still getting the word out about it. But yeah, this is a 3rd launch for this. So it's topics around serialization and growth are all things that, we're having fun talking about. And I know you have a topic around that. So can you sort of share what's on your mind?
So the thing I've been thinking about as far as kind of trying to move forward, and we were talking about kind of trying to level up, and so far my crowdfunding has been focused on No Spell, and I've had some other smaller projects, anthologies, shorts and things in anthologies, but my crowdfunding has just been No Spell related. But I have a couple of other projects that I'm working on that I'm kind of in the process of writing or finalizing that I would like to bring into the world in the not too distant future. And I guess my question is, how do I, in order to do that, obviously I'm going to have to be doing more campaigns each year than I've been doing so far. How do I do that without making my audience feel like I'm constantly asking them to contribute to things? Like, how do I ramp it up how do I take it up above kind of what they're used to hearing, how often they're used to hearing from me with campaigns? I think a lot of it probably has to do with reaching new audiences. One of them is a sci-fi that I'm working on with lesser known comics. And so one of the things that I'm doing there is I'm doing a sci-fi anthology with them, with kind of the goal being to try to reach some of their audience and try to reach some people who are interested in sci-fi specifically. No Spell is more contemporary fantasy. So I suspect that that's part of the key. It's just kind of trying to grow my audience or grow new audiences that I think are going to be interested specifically in the kinds of projects that these are. But I guess trying to decide what my next steps should be for that. And then as far as with the audience I've already built up, how do I not burn them out?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to open it up in just a second to the group, but I just want you, when you think about launching more projects and the reaction from your audience, what in your mind is like the worst case scenario of what your backers would be thinking about when you are launching 5 times as many projects next year as this year? Like, what's the story in your head that backers are saying?
I think it's just that, like, she's always coming to us asking for money. Like, I just backed another campaign and she's already trying to promote another one.
Okay. Other questions for Sarah before we dive into sharing our insights and thoughts? Yeah, Caleb.
How often do you communicate with your backers? Do you have an email list? And how often are you communicating with them outside of Kickstarter?
Yeah, I do. I have a Substack, and a lot of my previous backers have subscribed to it. And I do monthly or weekly newsletters through the Substack.
Perfect.
What other outlets do you have? I'm assuming social media.
Yeah, it's mostly Substack and social media. Instagram probably mostly. I've been doing a little bit of YouTube stuff. But right now, mostly Substack and social.
And you've this is your 3rd issue, right? And you're doing like what, 1 a year ish?
It's been 1 a year.
Okay.
I'd love to get it up to maybe 2 a year next year, but I don't know. Especially if I have other projects that I'm trying to get out, I don't know.
How many more projects do you plan on launching that are not involved with this particular title? And are you launching any that are kind of like a spinoff or related to this world? Basically, like, I guess, what are the differences per project? You said you have this one, you have the sci-fi one. Is there another one, or like how what's that look like as far as your roadmap?
Yeah, there's another one. And some of these I'm going to try to pitch around to and see if anything happens to come from any of that. I don't have anything specifically related to No Spell. I have ideas for things that I would maybe like to do eventually, but I don't have anything in the works right now.
Okay. One more question. When you look, I know you pay attention because you've done writing in comics, you've done media, you are involved in creator groups. When you watch what's going on Kickstarter, do you see creators that are launching more that seem to be doing well with launching more often than you're launching?
I do, and I think that's it makes sense to me that the more campaigns you do, the more you continue to expand your audience. And I see people out there who seem to be launching all the time, but seem to be doing well. And I think my fear is that kind of where my mind goes sometimes when I see those creators is like, oh, they just must have like a way larger audience than me. So of course they can do that because it's not the same people backing each time. And it's not all the same people backing for me each time, but they have a wider audience to draw from. So I guess it kind of feels a little bit like a chicken and the egg kind of question.
Yeah.
Because you grow your audience each time you launch, but you have to have enough of an audience to support these new launches. So that's where I kind of get stuck in the weeds, I think.
I have another question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Besides Kickstarter, besides social media, besides your email list, do you go to cons? How else are you building your audience besides like the anthologies, or are you doing anything outside of the interwebs?
I have gone to some cons. I haven't done a ton of it yet because mostly what I've done has been local, largely because of just cost of traveling. But I have done a little bit of that. I'd like to do more cons. Mostly what I've been doing has been online.
So one more question for Sarah, and then I'm actually going to ask Caleb too. Right now you're at one launch a year. You're considering going to 2 next year. At how many launches per year do you start to really feel that fear that, oh, that's too much for my audience? Like, does 2 get you scared, or is it more than that you start to?
2 feels okay. I think when I start to get into like 3 or 4 or 5, that starts to feel like I would love, just for myself, I'd love to be doing that many. But that's when I start to get nervous.
Yeah. So Caleb, you had mentioned at the end of your hot seat. So I wanted to go, yeah, like where are you at in terms of like, how many times did you launch last year? How many times are you on track to launch this year? And where's the number that you start to get, oh, is that too much?
I launched, I think, 7 times last year, and I'm trying to launch 10 this year. And the number where I wonder if it's too much is, can I start doing overlapping campaigns? That's my threshold right now. And I have more to say about that.
But I love this because right here in this group, 2 creators with the same fear, but wildly different in terms of the actual quantity. And I think that is the creative world in a nutshell. Who wants to pick it up from there?
Yeah, I'll run with it.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to like, putting out more and more and more and more, like I started out with 1 a year, then went 2 a year. Last year was my first time doing 4 a year. I plan on doing 4 again this year. I would love to go more and more and more. I would love to be like where, Caleb is right now, as far as like putting out like the amount. I'm stuck waiting on art. Matter of fact, there's I call her Rookie of the Year, but she's probably into her year 2 now. But Carissa Grant, she's putting out Worthy Chaos Redemption 1 a month, and she's been doing it since like a year ago, October. And I'm like, and she's new on the scene. She doesn't have a huge audience, but she's building as she goes. But like her artist is so fast, and her stories are already written out and done. Like I'm like blown away how fast she's getting these books out. And like she's immediately like, boom, I'm on my pre-launch. You just got your book right like a week after the campaign ended. I mean, she like even prints her books before the campaigns go live. So I mean, like burnout, I think that's more of a mental issue. Because like we all have that like fear that we're going to lose our audience. We might lose some along the way. But there's a lot of reasons for that. And that might not because they're burnt out because you just launched another campaign. Again, and crossing over with the different things, like if you have 3 different genres that you're about to launch, again, like I was saying to Caleb, like you're going to have these different buckets, and you're going to have very little drops from from all 3 of them that you're getting, into these buckets that you're filling these audience members with. So as long as you're continually filling these buckets with new audience members who want those particular stories, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Which I think that makes sense. And that's kind of what I feel like I need to be doing more of, is like with the reaching out to trying to build an audience who would be more interested in kind of the sci-fi, and there's going to be some crossover, but there will be some people who are just interested in that and might not be as interested in no spell because it's a different genre. So maybe that's kind of how I do it without just burning out the same group of people.
And that's kind of like the way, like, like retailers sending out emails, right? They, with new, email marketing tactics, they're segmenting their people too. So like, and this is what I started doing with Nightwolf and Snowpaw as well, is I have a tag that, if they're a Snowpaw backer or a Nightwolf backer, I will, mail more to, if I'm live with Nightwolf, I'll mail more to the Nightwolf people, but then occasionally just drop a few over here. Like it's kind of the same thing. I have a totally different email list built up for my Wolfpack pups that I, don't touch entirely at all when it comes to the comics anymore. Like now they're both kind of living on their own, you know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of like things you have to think about too when you're building your audiences for different books, is how do you want to segment that out? And then maybe drop a little bit over here just to see if they bite.
Yeah.
Comment came in from Elijah Bohr. He said, when I find a creator I love, I want more from them. I don't see creative output from them as them ask for money, but as an opportunity to enjoy their creative output. And I'd also say, like, we are in unique positions where we're in the world of comics. Growing up, I wanted my favorite writers or my favorite characters or my favorite artists, like, the more often they came out, the more excited I was. And, and sometimes a month was too long to go without supporting it. Now, yes, on the one hand, like the costs and paying for shipping and other things, like sometimes it's hard to back every project that we like, and there's always going to be some drop off. But I also think that many of those creators that do launch more often have realized that Kickstarter is actually one of their best audience builders, and the launch, what goes into a launch, the fact that you're out here on podcast, on stream, hanging out with us chuckleheads tonight, just getting the word out. And I said, you already got a couple new backers, right? So it's but that getting out of your comfort zone, getting on Kickstarter, the thing that we're scared of is exactly the thing that attracts people to us, because we're out there doing it where most people are kind of sitting on their dreams. And that is just an incredibly attractive thing. And I usually find that even if this is a concern of creators, it is usually the creator that is the bottleneck, like, or the creative team that is the bottleneck, as Rob is sort of finding, not the audience that is going to burn out first.
Right. So I have so much to say about this. In terms of the bottleneck thing, that's part of the reason why I've diversified. I have several different things going. And I mean, even Rob has 2 different main series going. That's 2 different art teams, which increases how fast he can put stuff out. But okay, so to at the risk of summoning him by saying his name, I want to invoke Pat Shand here a little bit. But a few years ago, he was publicly talking about, and he talked to me about how, like, oh, I'm at 4 or 5 campaigns a year right now, and I don't know if I can push that more because I don't want to burn out my audience. Look at what he's doing now. He's running like 20 plus campaigns a year.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes 3 at a time.
He's literally never not on Kickstarter. And from my own personal experience, I had never before a few months ago, I had never launched sooner than a month after the previous one had ended. The last 2 launches, including the one I just did, I hadn't even received the Kickstarter money from the previous Kickstarter yet before I launched again. Wow. And while I have my own opinions and my own thoughts and my own, like comparison is, we talk about that and how we can get in our heads about stuff. But if you look at this campaign and the last campaign, I doubt that anyone in this room would tell me that those were abject failures. I mean, those made their money back. I mean, I didn't lose money on those campaigns. And I launched before people could catch their breath, I was back on Kickstarter, and I plan to do it again. I'm launching after Modern Mythology Medusa ends. 4 days later, I'm launching Dragon Grit #2.
Wow.
And I know it's 4 days later because I had to confirm with Kickstarter before they would approve the project so I could start getting followers. They needed to know exactly when I was going to launch it, or else they weren't going to let me get that approved while I still had one live. And so I guess what I'm saying is like exactly what Tyler said. Like, if you're afraid of burning people out, if they like your thing and they want more of your thing, they'll be pumped to get more of your thing. The people who are following your series, No Spell Lasts Forever, who want more, they read issue 2. They were psyched about it. They're excited for issue 3. If you come back in a few months with issue 4, they're going to be losing their minds. They're going to be excited. They're going to want that, right? Now, if you have people who are saying, "Oh, you just asked us for money," those are not people who really care about your thing.
Yeah, they don't understand how comics work.
That's like, I mean, the person, you know, who told me that, the last person who told me that was my grandma. Because on my first Kickstarter, she backed it. And then the second one, she's like, "I thought you already kickstarted your comic career." and then I was like, "Grandma, please don't give me more money." But I mean, seriously, like, people who care about your stuff, they're gonna be pumped. They're gonna want more. And I think this is actually a very eye-opening conversation for me. Like Tyler said, I mean, it's all a matter of perspective, right? And if you ask someone like Pat Shan, the reason I bring that up is he's launching all the time, and he just had his best launch ever. He did a campaign. Now, we could get into not safe for work stuff, and that's like a whole can of worms. But he just had his best launch ever, and it was running while another campaign was going, and he was like on the heels of another thing, and so, you know, there's something to that. And I also would just like to put in here that the absolute best way to get more Kickstarter backers is to be on Kickstarter, because you can find people at conventions, you can find people through the direct market, but the people who are native to the platform are the people who are going to convert the best. That they just always are. Because if someone has to create a Kickstarter profile to back your thing, that's a barrier that could prevent them from backing it. Now, maybe you're the person who brings them onto the platform and then they become a Kickstarter backer, but backing, I mean, launching more is going to build. When I launched Dragon Grit, I added 200 people to my mailing list. Wow. And I had 250 people who had never backed one of my campaigns before. I mean, that was like a 10% growth in my audience. And so, you know, like, to me, fear is the mind killer, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just, this reminds me of just like in thinking about the podcast, and I've been doing it coming up on 10 years next year. God, oh my goodness. But but I think about how many like assumptions and myths and just like common wisdom that how we thought the whole Kickstarter crowdfunding thing was going to work, and how many of them, like, when these assumptions get tested, audience burn. Oh, you can't launch more than X number of times a year because your audience will get burned out. It's like, actually, that's probably wrong. The audience burnout is something that you should be far less concerned about than going into obscurity or disappearing for months at a time, when there's an audience that is there waiting to find the stuff that we're creating. So
and that kind of goes back to the Pat Shan thing, is like, he's always there, he's always relevant, he's always on Twitter, he's X now, I guess. He's always on, you know, Facebook. Like, he is everywhere, like, you know. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's watching now, waiting to be invited on. But you know what I mean? Like, he's even in my book right now. Like, he's one of the guest writers. Like, being relevant, being on top, like, he's always there. That's, you know, that plays to the whole, like, you just need to be in front of everybody at all times to be relevant. Because once you, even if you're gone for like 2 months, sometimes, like, you're like, you come back and you're like, oh, I have no traction, I got to build that back up. Even posting on Facebook once a day, that helps you stay relevant. You know what I mean?
That's true. It's something when many years ago, like 10, 12 years ago, when I was trying to be a freelance copy editor in another life, I had a mentor who told me that the most important thing to do as someone trying to get work from people is to remind them that you exist.
Yes.
And I think that fully applies to building an audience. You know, they got to remember. That's why I send out an email every single week, and you do too, and that's great. And I think some people are even afraid of sending out an email every week because they think they're going to be bothering people. But if they care, if they like what you're doing, they're going to be excited. I have a great open rate on my emails, and I do one every week. You know.
Yeah. I mean,
All right,
it makes so much sense. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, Sarah, we're gonna wrap this up here, but just what?
Can I say one thing before you?
Oh, go ahead, James. Sorry.
I made a note of a phrase you used, and you used it more than once. You said that you were worried about burning out the same group of people.
Yeah.
So that tells me that you think that you're going to go after the same 100 or 150 audience, your readers, over and over. So, which is obviously, that's kind of a hint at a limited mindset in there somewhere. So I would kind of push you to, as you're thinking about other Kickstarter campaigns, is to sit down with others or map out how you're going to grow your audience.
Yeah.
And kind of give yourself a little bit of a plan to follow so you can start to creep those numbers up. And my guess is there's maybe buried in your head somewhere is, well, once I'm at 300 backers, that's when I'm less worried about burnout, which is that's probably not true because you're going to be worried about it then too. But I think you need to start getting yourself to move towards that vision of growing your audience, which might help you overcome that hurdle of burning out the same group.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense because it does feel like that. And I do kind of think like, oh, well, if I were getting this many backers for each project, then I wouldn't be so anxious about this.
Can I want to just put something in there really quick. One of my best friends in the world is Curtis Clow. I talk to him all the time. Does Beastlands. He's been on the ComixLaunch podcast as well. He recently had a campaign where he fell short of 1,000 backers, which is what he has been hitting on some of his more recent campaigns. And he felt like, oh, I just really need to hit that 1,000 backer number. That's when I'm going to be singing, 1,000 backers. And it's like, I'm sitting here thinking like my best thing ever was 600 something. And that, and I'm thinking, like it's all relative. You're never going to feel like it's enough is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
you're never going to feel like it's enough.
Yeah, there's always going to be that ladder that you're climbing.
Yeah. And I think it feels like, I mean, it makes so much sense because I think the worry is that I just don't have enough people. I don't have a big enough audience yet to support doing more campaigns. But I think it's probably the opposite. The more campaigns I do, the more people I'll bring in. And maybe I've even been holding myself back a little bit, not doing more campaigns the last couple of years. So it makes a lot of sense.
How many launches are you going to do next year, Sarah?
At least 2.
All right. And you're going to feel great about doing those too.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you for bringing that issue and the lively discussion. And I love how, just in this group, it's the same issue, different perspectives, and one creator's way too much is one creator's, oh my goodness. I need to, that would be a breeze of a year. Awesome. Well, we are rocking out with mastermind sessions. I appreciate everybody tuning in on the replays, and I appreciate all 4 of you for being here supporting us. We got one more creator to bring on the show, and up next is James Powell, who is a professional editor as well as a book coach. He focuses on helping genre writers finish and polish their novels and comics. You may know him from the Kickstarter funded and Dark Horse published series House of Fear, which are scary comics for kids. And he writes a weekly Substack actually called Balancing Opposites. So definitely check that out as well. We'll include links to that in the show notes and such. But welcome, James Powell. How you doing, James?
I'm doing pretty good. Great to be here.
Now, thanks for being here, James. And you are someone who does not have a live Kickstarter right now, but you are in pre-launch with 40 followers, soon to hopefully to be a bunch more. Let me click that there for you. And everyone else that's watching, please do the same. But tell us about what you've got coming on Kickstarter. And I know this is going to actually lead into your hot seat.
So yeah, this is The Wishing Stone. It's a novella. So I haven't been on Kickstarter for a little over a year and a half. And in that time, I've written a couple of short books. And so this is kind of my attempt to not permanently, but kind of start to switch gears a little bit and go for prose, go for regular fiction instead of comics.
Can you give us just the log line or the high level about what The Wishing Stone is about for those of us that can also read books that don't just have pictures in them?
So it's a House of Fear tangent story. It's kind of related to the House of Fear stories. But basically a girl on Halloween, someone gives her a wishing stone, and it turns out to be actually, it comes true, some of her wishes, and they don't always turn out the way she hoped. So, and if you know me, it's kids versus monsters, basically. I love monster movies, and I like putting kids into trouble. So
nice.
Lots of that here.
Awesome. Well, what's on your mind, James? What's the topic that you're bringing to the group today?
So I have this book plus another fiction book and one nonfiction book that is, the nonfiction is kind of closely tied with my Substack, which is I talk to writers and help them overcome some hurdles and learn about the publishing and writing and everything that's related to the writer's life. So I think what I want to try to do with this mastermind is maybe talk me down from the ledge about a 3-day Kickstarter, or maybe hype me up about it. But I want to have a plan in place for all the books that I do moving forward. My current plan is to have a Kickstarter campaign for a hardcover, signed, limited, numbered. And then from there, do a paperback and digital version on Amazon, and Barnes and Noble and all that stuff. But I want my Kickstarter campaign to feel kind of like a book launch party. I've been to some friends who have had novels published in the past, and they have a bunch of people come over and they have stacks of books and they sign them and hand them out to people who come to the party. I kind of want to have that vibe. That's kind of what I was hoping for with the 3-day limited edition, knowing that other editions, the paperback or the digital copies, are available later. So that's kind of where I'm at. But you know, we're in the publishing world. There's so many options, and I'm not quite sure where I want to go with it.
Okay. Well, thanks for bringing that this subject to the table. Before we share our strong opinions about James's ideas here, who has some clarifying questions on this? Yeah, Caleb.
Yeah. Okay. What ranges of Kickstarter lengths have you done before?
I've done, the longest is the 30-day. I think my shortest was 14 or 17. Okay. I realized that I like the shorter better. I like to go in hot and get out. and I'm not gonna lie, that's part of the reason I want to have a 3-day is because I do get burned out pretty easily with those longer ones.
Okay. What is it you're trying to? What specifically are you trying to avoid by truncating your campaign to just 3 days versus 17 or even 14, which would be still significantly shorter than your longest,
right?
But more than 3.
So right now, I think my Substack, which is, you know, my email list, is focused on the nonfiction, the writing. Right now, I don't have an outlet for promoting in horror groups. I don't spend a lot of time hyping up fiction. I don't spend a lot of time in those realms. So I don't want to say I'm scared of the dead zone or anything like that. It's I just don't have a lot of places to promote it. In part because I want to keep focused on that other area. This is a book that I believe in and I have, but I hate to say it this way, but it's almost like the fiction feels kind of like a hobby right now, whereas the nonfiction and the editing is where my bread and butter is, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to get them all out there. I don't want to wait on the fiction until I have a time to grow that audience and get my name out there in the fiction world again. So I think it's, as far as not wanting to do, I think that's where that is. But at the same time, I really do want it. It's less of a fear thing and less of a worry about promoting, and more to make it a tight, small, quick, fun thing than anything else.
I have a couple questions. So do you know what your goal is, obviously, going into this, I'm sure. So how much is your goal, and how many tiers do you have? What's your average that you think will be the average funding spend per pledge?
So it depends. If I go with just the hardcover, I'm thinking about going all in on that and not having digital. So it would be just the hardcover, signed and numbered. And then I have 2 tiers on top of that, where I have some scenes that I could incorporate a reader. If they want to put their son or daughter in there, if they want to be in it, I could get their name and some of their likeness and have them actually be in the book. So those are higher level tiers. Those kind of tiers have worked for me in the past. So I was trying to see if that would help me here. And if I do that, though, I would have to keep my funding goal lower. I think I have it at 500. Whereas if I add the paperback and the digital, I would probably creep that up to 750. Mm-hmm. And those numbers are just based on other fiction. They're across the board. They seem to be lower than comics, which is kind of where I'm coming from. So it was kind of eye-opening to look into fiction for the first time and see that even though some people are funding it, $3,000, their original goal was $250.
Yeah, prose is definitely a different beast than comic in terms of success rates and just structures of campaigns and things like that. But yeah,
is that goal enough to hit, like, to be able to print your hardbacks without going into the red, or like is that just kind of like, this is what I'm hoping to hit and then make more to pay for the rest of the printing? Or
it would pay for the printing and some of the other stuff, like getting the cover done, the editing. I paid for an editor and all that stuff. So and the way I'm kind of looking at it is that because I have an outlet on Amazon, if I choose to go that route, there's a part of me that's maybe just make fiction just Kickstarter and nowhere else, except for on my website or something. And I know I'm throwing a bunch of random stuff. There's a lot of ideas I have, and I'm not really sure how limited, there's a part of me that's just, I make this campaign and it's a hardcover and whoever gets it and no one else sees it again. I kind of want to have fun with it and make it feel special. Like this campaign here's this cool item for people who have known me in the past and supported me in the past. Because that's kind of where these are all coming from, because I haven't promoted it elsewhere. So,
yeah. Any other questions for James before we give our thoughts on this strategy?
I have a question for you, Tyler. Do you know what the average Kickstarter time period is?
I'd have to. Oh, it's been a while since I looked at.
That's why I'm like, I can't remember
what those rules were, but I think it was definitely. I think it was like 21 days or less.
Okay.
That's funny. When you said Kickstarter, I did a 10-day campaign.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's just my comfort zone. Maybe I like to get in and get out. I don't know, but I did do a 10-day.
All right, so we've got a lot of creators in here with some experience, and I know Caleb, you're experimenting with truncating from the 30-day campaign. It seems like, or are you sticking the same length for all of your campaigns?
No, I've got a lot of thoughts because I've done a lot of different lengths.
Right.
Actually.
So we're gonna let James sit back and just listen to what we're all thinking of. But let's start with you, Caleb.
Sure. Okay. So the first thing I have to say is that when it comes to length, I mean, I do think it kind of depends on whether or not you're trying to get to a new audience or just hit your existing audience. Because if you're just trying to hit your existing audience, a 3-day campaign would probably be fine. I mean, I read a book that I recently did that clearly only appealed to my existing audience. I might as well have done a 3-day campaign because it was like 230 backers in 2 days and then like flatlined, right? And so it's like I might as well have just got in and out on that one. I would have gotten my money faster, right? But that depends on whether or not you're trying to reach a new audience, and it kind of sounds like you're not. Kind of sounds like you don't intend to put any like major effort into promoting it outside of your existing audience. In that case, I think it could be a lot of fun. My shortest one ever was a 5-day campaign, and that was like a very funny little drawing campaign where I did a drawing of a giraffe and asked people to tell me what to add to the giraffe. And it was I didn't make a lot of money, but it was super fun, and it felt like a party. Like everyone was like involved. And then the other thought that I have is where you said you weren't going to do a digital edition. And I actually think that's awesome as long as you're intending to make it available, whether it's just on your website or on Amazon or whatever, as a digital format later on. Because if you can really pump up the idea of like, this is a special edition. I mean, think about like Brandon Sanderson's Dragonsteel stuff that he does. It's like, spend $100 on this fancy leather bound edition of my book, even though you could just get it on Kindle or Audible or whatever. And if the thing is, here's a fancy hardcover edition, and it's never going to be available again in this format, but you can get it digitally later. I think that's a great idea if you really emphasize that. And so if what you're trying to do is provide a special, cool thing for your existing readers who care about what you've done before, then a 3-day campaign with limited rewards, it's like high-end rewards, I think is an amazing idea. I mean, I think it's killer. If those are your goals. And I've been experimenting with campaign length. I actually have some plans for some campaigns later on that I'm going to run for only 2 weeks because I expect that they're only targeting certain people and they're not going to be audience builders as much. But whenever I feel like I'm doing something where I want to grow the audience, I'm doing the full 30 days. But that said, basically, if you're looking for opinions on your plan, if you're targeting your existing audience and you want to make it special, I say don't do digital. Just do that fancy hardcover. Just do the 3 days or the 5 days. Make it an event. Do a live stream with your audience. And get in and get out. And then after those people have the book, make it available digitally on your website or on Amazon. That's my opinion.
Rob, you agree, disagree? Want to anything that you want to challenge?
So I'm thinking between 5 and 10 days, because 5 would be comfortable because you get the 2 days, the initial launch. Usually your biggest 2 days, your first 2 days. And then like the end of your campaign, the last 2 days, you get that 48-hour push and 24-hour push. To me, if like somebody's watching, but doesn't feel, because there's still the people out there who, despite you only getting charged when the campaign ends, will be like, oh, I have to save my money and then I'm going to get what I want. You know what I mean? I don't know how much of that will cross over into this. But, at least putting a pay period in there too is something you want to think about. Because if you're like in between pay periods, you're going to get people being like, chances that your campaign falls on everyone's payday
in the world out there is pretty low if it's 3 days. You know, it's a good thing. And people are still weird about that, like where they're like, "Oh, I'm going to wait until I get paid on Friday and then I'll back the campaign." It's like, campaign doesn't end in a month. People still say that, right? It's just psychological.
Yeah. People just want to make sure they have that in their account before, and then that the opposite does happen too. If like you go too long, you'll have like the people who are like, oh, well, something came up, I have to use that money and pull out. That's life. But like at least having a pay period or two in there is better than not having any, because if you do 3 days, you're definitely not hitting somebody's pay unless you're doing it on a Friday, but then again, that may be the in-between pay period, you never know.
Sarah, thoughts for James?
Yeah, I like the idea of the short campaign in general. I do think it feels kind of like an event, like for what you're going for. It feels like an event, and it feels like an exclusive kind of thing. And especially since it's House of Fear, so anyone else who's already excited about House of Fear, it feels like this is a cool thing for them to buy into. I've been thinking about experimenting with campaign links. I haven't done it yet, but I have been thinking going a little bit shorter. I like the sense of urgency. I like cutting out the dead zone, and especially for this kind of thing, for what you're trying to accomplish. I think it would work well. It seems exciting to me. The pay period concern is interesting, and maybe stretching it out a little bit, 5 days or something. But I also do like the idea of keeping it pretty short for what you're going for. I think it's a cool idea.
So one of the things that I'm always thinking about is like being relevant in the context that we're operating in, right? If you're going to be on Facebook, do things Facebook wants you to do. If you're going to be on Instagram, do things Instagram wants you to do. Like, don't try to fight against the forces or the way things are. Try to, use those forces to your advantage. And when I think about all of the things the Kickstarter platform offers, it feels like it's really not optimized for a 3-day campaign. In that Kickstarter is, when everybody looks at their campaigns, they are despite all of the work that we tell you in ComixLaunch to build your own audiences, get those emails, drive your own traffic, Kickstarter is still via emails or cross promotions or anything. They drive a big chunk of the traffic, even if a lot of that traffic that Kickstarter is taking credit for is already in your own orbit. But there's messaging that Kickstarter sends out. There's the Project We Love tag. There's the newsletter. There's, hey, this person backed that you backed. There's follow-up emails that Kickstarter sends to people if they, click but don't complete. Trying to condense all of that into a 3-hour or a 3-day campaign.
3 hour. That's now you're
Sorry,
talking.
3 hours. Yeah. but it's like here's what would happen literally, James, is like on day one you would launch and Kickstarter would send an email to people following you and past backers saying you launched. Then on day 2 they'd say 48 hours left, and then on day 3 they'd say 8 hours left, and so Kickstarter is hammering your backers 3 consecutive days. So like I would never go less than 3 days, because those are 3 automatic emails that Kickstarter is going to send. But if you went 2 days or 1 day, you might break their system. Like I don't even know how that would work. But there's that other cross promoting opportunities that you sort of get out on. And then the other thing that I would say is like, and I get that your focus is in the nonfiction and the other things, but and that there might be some projects where a 3-day campaign is perfect for, like the kind of silly giraffe drawing one that Caleb was talking about, that he had a lot of fun with, and I can imagine that. But when I think of like an exclusive hardcover novella signed hardback that also ties into a series that presumably you have copies to sell of that and could reintroduce this to an audience, it seems like this is an opportunity for you to sell some books and to get out there and talk about your stuff and to talk about this book, but also use this launch as a reason to talk about all the other stuff that you do. And I do wonder if, like, are you trying to just play small or safe and be done with it, just so that you're playing it safe, as opposed to getting a little bit outside of your comfort zone, lining up some of that stuff to talk about this and make it happen. We mentioned how the creators that are launching more, well, they're launching more. They have more days where the cart is open on Kickstarter, and they're selling a lot more than most people. And so to, put a lot of effort into pre-launch, but then just really just open up on Kickstarter, which is like one of the highest converting platforms out there. But just to leave that to just 3 days, it seems like it's potentially I don't know. It'll be over in a blink, and you may leave opportunity on the sidelines.
And to piggyback off of Tyler, like you could do a tier with your services, like that could be introducing into new clients for you for, your editing and other things that you want to do. Also, like going back to like your past, if you have stock in like, the House of Fear, you could be offering those up too as like either add-ons or a bundle tier, right, just to get rid of some stock that you might have sitting on your,
Yeah, and you're right. I do have those as add-ons. You're right about that.
I just one last thing I have to say in terms of the length. I do think that there's some real merit in thinking about what's too short. But in terms of the content, I want to circle back to the digital thing and the hardcover thing. I've actually spoken to a number, because eventually I'd like to get into doing pros on Kickstarter. I'm just a chicken. I think that there's a real value in not offering a digital version, because if I'm a reader and I'm looking at your book and the first option is that printed hardback book, then I might get that, even if I would have gotten the digital otherwise as a Kickstarter backer. And so a good friend of mine has done a number of Kickstarter campaigns for her novels, and she never offers a digital edition, even though, it's available later. And that's been very successful for her in driving up that average price. And if you're presenting it as a deluxe, like fancy thing specifically to celebrate your backers, I think leaning into that is a good idea, regardless of the length that you end up deciding on.
I love everything everybody's saying. I don't know if it's made my decision any easier, but I do have one more question. Is you guys keep talking about fancy? You use the word fancy a lot. Like I know, Rob, your book is die cut, and it's got the vellum in there, and that's, to me, that's fancy. How can I say this? Like mine is just a hardcover. Like it doesn't have any bells and whistles other than it's limited to how many people buy it right now.
Well, you could always do a stretch goal. So if you did a stretch goal with it, you could have a dust jacket added,
Well, see, that's the problem, is that I couldn't find anybody to do a dust jacket for something that's as small as it is. I mean, I could keep looking. I just now that you guys have said fancy enough times, I'm worried that it's not fancy enough.
You must add a die cut.
I mean,
I can do that on while it's live. I can make everybody's personalized and scratch something in the cover.
I mean, it would go with the House of Fear, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like when I hear signed, numbered, hardcover, limited edition, that sort of thing, that strikes of, oh, it's a collectible.
Collector's item, even if it's just a hardcover that you sign, that still makes it a collector's item.
Yeah, you sign again. Right. If you, like you said, you might not do that again. That book, that particular cover of that hardcover, right? You said that it might just disappear.
Oh, absolutely.
So that makes it exclusive and limited right there.
Yeah. Okay.
And just that it's hardcover. I mean, even if I'm just buying a book on Amazon and I'm deciding whether to get the paperback or the hardcover always feels fancy to me.
Okay. I just got a proof in from Amazon, and they're just pretty nice. It's just like you said, it doesn't have the dust jacket, so
Nice.
yeah. I don't know. I don't feel like it's me trying to stay small. I don't think it's that this time. I mean, because I've felt that before, believe me.
Yeah.
And I do think that because I have Amazon to back me up as far as being able to sell it online, for that reason, it feels different. It's almost like, Rob, if you had Diamond backing you up, maybe that would change how you felt about Kickstarter. Maybe, I don't know, but I feel like with Amazon, I can just put it up for a paperback in the digital, and it's kind of changing how I see Kickstarter. So I don't know. You guys gave me a lot of thoughts. The existing audience, that Caleb mentioned, the way he worded that, I kind of always thought that, but hearing you say that is like, oh yeah, that's totally what I'm doing. It's like, hey, everybody that supported me in the past, here's this cool new thing I'm doing. Come get it if you'd like, kind of thing. Knowing that in the future, I definitely want to increase my audience, but the question is whether or not I want to get into that right now. So,
yeah. Well, awesome, James. And you know, this is the great thing about the Kickstarter platform is like, even though there are a lot of notions about what a Kickstarter is, most of the rules we get to set ourselves. We get to decide the size of the launch, the scope of the launch, what we launch, what we don't launch, what we put ourselves through, what we allow ourselves to not, give an F about.
I did hear you say 3 hours, so I'm running with that. That's what I wrote down. It was 3 hours. Tyler said 3 hours.
I'm over here trying to get you to bump it up, and instead you shaved.
Yeah, we hear what we want to hear. We hear what we want to hear.
Well, I love that you got a lot of perspective just within this group. And
yeah, it was great. It was great.
And
thanks.
I'm putting it out to your audience might also be something fun to hear what they say about. And if nothing else, inside the 3-day or 3-hour Kickstarter campaign, whatever it comes out to be, will make great content for your Substack.
That's true. That's true. All right. Yeah, seriously, this is great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we have come to the end of our hot seats. And this is kind of again, I want to thank everyone that participated in this pop-up mastermind session. This is the first time this particular set of creators has ever assembled. But anytime that you get good people into a room and get them talking about things that we're really passionate about, good things happen. So I want to thank everybody for giving their time and attention. I know we ran a little over, but I appreciate y'all being here for this. And I want to always end these sessions on a strong note, a positive note. And the way we do that is I just ask everyone to share their top takeaway from the conversation tonight. It could be a takeaway or an aha or an insight around their own topic, or it could be something that came up for someone else. So Rob, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, the 3-hour campaign sounds amazing. Seriously though, what you had mentioned about doing the play the hits with the covers, make the adjustments for that. That definitely wasn't anything I was thinking about. So that I think that, like I said, will help me get a little bit closer to doing this.
Awesome, man. And best place for people to check out more of your work.
Yeah, so you can find me at lonewolfcomics.com. I'm at Lone Wolf Comics, as you can see right here. Facebook, Twitter, well, X. I can't not say Twitter. It's weird. And Instagram. You could also find me at Rob Multari on the same socials. And again, with the live campaign, the short link is lonewolfcomics.com/nightwolf, and that'll redirect you to the live campaign that we have running until June 14th.
Awesome, man. Best of luck with your launch. James, how about yourself? What was your top takeaway from this evening?
I had a lot of great takeaways, but I think the one that I often overlooked that I liked was when you mentioned to use some of the advantages that Kickstarter brings to the table. Think about why I'm using this platform and all the things that they do for creators who launch. Sometimes I don't always think about what they bring. So that's going to be an interesting way to attack what I do next.
Yeah. And please give a plug for both where people can find more about the creative work that you put out, but also who you're interested in helping and who you can help out there for the creators that listen to us.
So yeah, if you're a writer out there, genre, if you write horror, comics, if you do detective novels, whatever, you can find me at jamespowellediting.com. And if you want to follow my Balancing Opposites, where I talk about the writer's life, that's jamespowellediting.substack.com.
Awesome, man. And appreciate you being here and sharing your insights with all of us. Good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sarah, you want to share your top takeaway from tonight?
Yeah, I think for me, it was almost this idea that I'm kind of looking at growth almost backwards. That I've been worried that I don't have the audience to grow as much as I'd like to, but that it's probably actually the reverse, that doing more Kickstarters is actually going to be the thing that helps me grow. I think that was a really interesting perspective and makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. And for people that want to keep up with you on the socials or your newsletter, where should people go?
Yeah, the campaign, No Spell number 3, is live right now. The short URL is tinyurl.com/nospell3. My Substack is sarahlindsaycooke.substack.com. And where else? I'm on social, mostly Instagram, Twitter too, but mostly Instagram, at Sarah C Comics. And that's Sarah with an H.
Awesome, Sarah. Thanks for being here. And Caleb, bring us home. Top takeaway from tonight, and where can we find out more about you?
So I would say my top takeaway is that I need to think about what makes the work that I do shout Caleb, as you guys said, and figure out how I can apply that to every new project that I do, both things that are re-hitting the classics, but also brand new stuff. How can I make sure that even if I'm trying to cater to a wider audience, that I'm injecting that with what is like essentially me.
Awesome.
Yep.
And you've got your website up there, which will link to a bunch of your stuff, and any socials or in particular you want to call out?
I mean, you can find me on Twitter /X and Facebook and Instagram, but I always say that I forget that those things exist. And so I think my Instagram link is for like 3 Kickstarters ago, if you go to the Instagram. But calebquist.com, if you go there, you can sign up for my newsletter. And that's the absolute best way to keep track of what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you to the panel. Wonderful hot seats tonight. These creators have great Kickstarter projects, great stuff coming. You're definitely going to want to check out all of their work and support it if you can. But thanks also to everyone that tuned in to watch this. This is a great stream that went out live. If you're catching this live, if you got the replay, engage in the comments. There's some good comments in there I look forward to following up with. And then I will also leave you with the reminder that if you like this stuff, if you want wish you were on the hot seat, if you like the opportunity to get into a group on a regular, consistent basis, get that professional development on your schedule. That's what the Comics Launch Mastermind is all about. You can head over to comicslaunch.com/mastermind. We'll be starting up new groups in the second week in July, but enrollment for that happens in June. And so I will be doing a live session and a whole lot more coming up. You'll find more details on the ComixLaunch podcast and all of that. So yeah, we're heading into mastermind season. It's always a fun time. And so would love to see if I can find a spot for you in a group if this is something that you want in your life for the second half of 2024. So with that said, everyone, on behalf of this whole awesome crew here and all of us over at ComixLaunch, thank you so much for watching, and we can't wait to see what you launch next. Take care, everybody.